loves, and welcome back to the Power for Good podcast. I'm Chrystal Rae, and I'm so happy to be back here with you today. It's a really special day because, number one, it's my birthday, it's Christmas, it's the holidays, and I'm here with my mom.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This is Chrystal Rae. Well, I'll let you introduce yourself if you would like.
I am Christina's mom, that's most importantly. And my name is Chrystal Rae. I own a couple of yoga studios here in town. I just finished writing a book, but I'm just really excited to have Christina here. I mean, I think I'd like to talk about her birthday today, just how nice it is to have this Christmas baby. I have a really special story about her and my relationship that started even before she was born. When I was a kid, I had this, she's like a really special person. I'm sure you guys know that already. And it's not just my bias. Of course, it's true. But when I was a kid, I had a dream that I would have a baby, a little girl, and that we would be best friends. And so this little girl, about 5 or 6 years old, who looks just like Christina when she was 5 or 6 years old, came to me and told me, "Hey, I'm going to be your daughter, and we're going to be best friends." And she says, "But I don't want you to name me Chrystal," which is my name, of course. And she said,
"That's very me."
That's so Christina. She says, "I want you to name me Christina, and we're going to be best friends." And then she looks over her shoulder and she says, "Best friends." And then she says, "Remember, Christina." So I always knew that I would have a little girl and that her name would be Christina. What I didn't know is that she would be this most amazing person who's changing the world, changing the planet with her beautiful spirit and her beautiful energy. And I'm so proud of her and just really, really grateful to have such a beautiful child and a beautiful soul in my life. It's nice when you start to learn from your children. Like this famous quote that I really like from Khalil Gibran, where he says, "As parents, we are the bows and we send our children out, which are the arrows, into a future that we will never know." And I kind of feel that way with this beautiful soul, that I've kind of had the honor of just following that arrow out and seeing where it will go.
Oh, thank you. Well, it feels really special to have this birthday and to record this podcast with you today. Thank you for sharing that story. And my mom has been such an inspiration to me in my life. So I'm so excited to share this space and this container with you guys today, where we can talk about all that we've been through together, our journey, growing up, the best times of our life, love, and to share with you a little bit about how my mom has inspired me and have her share her story with you. It's so special to me to do that on my birthday. Today, I'm turning 34. Woo! Yeah, it's a special time because this past year has been so transformational for me, and I'm calling in more and more expansiveness in this next year. It's honestly been one of the best years of my life this past year, and I feel this next year is about to be even better. We are best friends, and my mom has been such a big part of that growth. So thank you so much.
I'm so proud of you.
Why don't we start? I want to take it back a little bit to one of the questions that I always start the podcast with, which is, how are you using your power for good?
Power for good. So I kind of started the podcast by saying that I've just finished writing a book. I had a near-death experience some years ago, almost 30 years now. And in the midst of this near-death experience, after being hit by a car, going off a cliff, flipping, we fell 80 feet, hit the ground, and then we flipped 10 times. So just to be alive is quite spectacular. It was kind of like something you might imagine to see in a movie. But what happened in the interim of that space, from going from the top of the cliff to the bottom of the cliff, was that I was in an out-of-body experience, out-of-body space, and in the presence of divine light, a presence. And I was shown multiple realities, and one of which I would come back and write a book and poignantly tell the world that love is all that matters. And I was also told, and by the way, put in your book that sound and light is the future of medicine. So I was like, okay. I was shown several, many destinies I could have taken, some of which I would come back and have disabilities, others where I would leave the planet. But this is the one I chose to come back and write this book, which also poignantly for Christina, just this year, we're just completing the book. I just got it out on Amazon. It's called Love Letters to Your Soul. And it's a book that I always wanted when I was going through the dark night of my soul. My mother, I know Christina has done the journey of becoming sober. I'm so proud of her for that. And my mother had a similar experience where she had a drinking problem for most of her life. And I grew up in a very dysfunctional home as a result. I never really felt worthy. I never really felt good enough or loved, which I think happens to a lot of kids who have alcoholic parents. I think we're always trying to fix it for them and try to make it better. And we become kind of people pleasers and all of the stuff. My journey was to find my own healing and my own worthiness so that I could share. Because I remember thinking when I was in this space with this divine being that, by the way, was pure love and pure light, thinking that how could I, who had failed as, failed in all of my relationships, like I don't feel like, I never felt good enough for my mother. I never felt my father was absent, and my first marriage didn't work out well, except for these beautiful children that I had. So I was like, why would I be the one to talk about love? And I was shown that it has to do with your heart, like a really pure heart. And so I was shown that I could speak this message of love, but the reason it's taken me so long to write this book is because I had to be able to embody the powerful woman that I've become, where I could actually meet someone and say, my soul loves your soul. And indeed, love is all that matters. So as a force of good, not only do I have yoga studios, 3 of them here, and 2 teacher training facilities as well, but I also just finished this book, and I am sharing, and even in our yoga studios, I have as a slogan, love is why. And then people always ask why, and I'm like, why everything? Love is all that matters. So that's been my mission for the last 20 years, to heal myself so that I could be a conduit of light, an ambassador of light, and share the message of unconditional love, which I think, especially now that our world needs so poignantly at this time. So it's wonderful that it's come to fruition in this year. And Christina said that like her last year has been really transformational and powerful. And I think what she didn't share with you is that also entails a lot of, deep soul work and hard things that you have to go through. And one of the things I'm really proud of her for is that her true discipline and finding her way, even when things are hard, and doing the right thing. And I'm always amazed at how powerful she is. And so many people that I think she affects, and with her very presence, and she's so authentically Christina.
We've gotten a little bit into that in this podcast, and we're getting there.
Oh, yeah.
We're getting to sharing a little bit of that for sure. A year of authenticity. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I want to go back a little bit to the near-death experience. How did you process all of those messages that came through?
It was hard, truthfully, because I had an experience when I was a child, which was really spiritual and kind of set me on a path that I knew there was something more, but I didn't really have a spiritual context. So after the accident, immediately following the accident, I felt like there was like a door that had opened. It was like a portal that had opened. And I remember I couldn't even touch somebody without knowing their deepest fears and greatest joys and secrets that I didn't really necessarily want to know. There's a lot of fear in humanity.
So you felt like you became really like an empath.
More than that, I would have, because I feel like an empath kind of feels other people's feelings. That was true. I did feel it, but I would literally see a little movie of what was going on, like in their life. For example, at the hospital, so my cousin, who was also in the car with us, she came in, and she had been in the back seat of this little Jeep that we were in, and then the guy who was driving. But for some reason, they thought that we were drinking, which is kind of funny, because I don't drink. It's not funny, but kind of funny. I guess it happens a lot, like in those kind of towns. And we were in Vail, and I was like, no, I wasn't drinking. They said, yeah, well, if you need to take a blood test or something, because if you were drinking, your cousin's going to die, or da da da. I wasn't driving, but anyway. And I kind of pushed through. I saw her come in on a stretcher. She was in a coma, and I went over and I just touched her leg, and I literally felt like a bolt of lightning go through my body and then kind of ripple through her. And I immediately knew that she would be okay, better than okay. And I also knew it was going to be a hard, arduous journey for her. And then a male nurse came and grabbed me and said, "You're not supposed to be in here." And he like pulled me away. But when he did that, I saw like a little movie of him like beating his girlfriend or his wife or the significant other in his life. And I was like stunned. I was like stunned. And I like pulled away and I ran into the bathroom. I literally just went into a little ball in the corner. I think they thought I was in shock, but it was just because of that little movie that I saw. And I was like, "Don't touch me. Like, do not touch me."
Yeah.
And then they told me my neck was broken with the first x-ray. And I was like, "Oh, no, that wasn't part of my life review." So I put my hand on my neck. I said, "No, I can't have a broken neck." And again, I felt that same like bolt of lightning kind of going through me. And on the second, third, and fourth x-ray, there was no break in my neck and nobody could explain it, but they made me sign a paper saying that basically they weren't responsible if my neck was broken. And although my neck was not broken, I did have a very severe case of whiplash, which is what led me to yoga. But to answer your question, when I went back home, I was so excited to get home and see the kids because I saw in my out of body experience that, which was also shocking, that my kids would be okay without me, which I was like, what? That each soul is here for the bliss of its own experience. And that if I were to choose to leave the planet, then that would also serve their soul. Like it would be fine. They would find their way. Each one of us has to kind of find our own way home. And it's not dependent on your parents. It's basically dependent on you, which I was kind of shocked about. But I was so excited that I had another chance. And my life had been such because I'd always been a caretaker of dysfunctional, home, mother with alcoholism, absent father, this and that. I was kind of the matriarch of the family at 5 years old, truthfully. So when I got back from the car accident, I was so grateful to see my kids, but it was a different kind of gratefulness because it was before it was like, I have this responsibility. I have to be a good mother. I have to be a good daughter. I have to be a good wife, good ex-wife. I have to. And after, and so this is going back to your question about the force of good, I realized that I get to. Like I get to be a good mother. I get to, enjoy my life. I get to be a good friend. It wasn't like I had to anymore. I get to, even when my mother was old and she really needed someone to take care of her, I get to do that because I love my mother. One thing I always want to say, like, just like a disclaimer is that I feel like I had the perfect mother for me. Yeah. Because I learned so much from her, even if it was an anti-example, and she was doing the best she could always. And that's all we can ever ask, Addictions, as you know, are so hard. One of the things that happened as a result of me leaving home when I was 17 is that my mom stopped drinking. And that changed her life. Completely. She went all the way over to the pendulum side of like extreme Christianity. And then somehow found her way back to the middle. And she also became a force of good. Like she became a minister before she died. And, so things tend to work out as they should. But so that's the long answer to a short question.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. It's the shift in mindset, right? You're saying these things, you get to do these things. It's happening for you or through you rather than they're happening to you.
Exactly.
And I feel like that has been pivotal in my life as well, with the addiction or with the seizures or with any of the bad experiences I've had in my life. As I shifted from these things happened for a reason or lessons or realizations, that sort of changes your whole life because people that live in that sort of victim mentality, it keeps you trapped. When you can't forgive people, when you can't move on, it keeps you trapped, and that will keep you in that cycle of addiction or that cycle of toxic behavior because you're feeling very low energy. So when you move through that and you're able to see that there's lessons and there might be a reason that you ended up with these parents, there might be a reason that you ended up in situations or had these really horrible relationships or friendships, then you break the cycle and you're able to move on and you're able to change your mindset and see all of these opportunities and lessons and realizations. And that's the awakening. Right. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's why I was wondering about the near-death experience, because maybe some people have been through big challenges like a near-death experience or going through, a big breakup or whatever it might be for somebody, and even a spiritual awakening, and it might feel like too much. So what do you think are some things that you did that helped you move through that? Or even reflecting, going back and thinking about, you grew up in this very harsh environment, right? With your parents, and your mom was an alcoholic and you had a really hard time growing up. And so for me, it's very inspiring to see what you've become, this power for good, this force of nature. You inspire all of these yogis. You've written this book. You're super healthy. You never drank. You really broke so many cycles. It's so powerful. It's so inspiring. It's beautiful. And yet it's like, how did you do it? And so I'm sure people always wonder that. How did you do it? And what can you offer anyone listening to this podcast is that maybe had a really rough past and feels stuck in these cycles, stuck in the chains of the past? What are some steps that you took? Obviously, you've done yoga and things like that, but is it one big thing, or is it day by day? Or what do you feel like you can offer somebody listening that might be in something that has happened big, or it's the past? Or
So I'll go back, like, just as a child. I told you I had a really special experience where I had this experience where I was having a conversation with God, and I asked him, like, and it was like my first real sense of self-worth is I realized that I didn't want to be a good person to get to heaven or to avoid hell, that I just wanted to be a good person. It felt corrupt to me to like try to be good, as we're talking about a force of good, to get something, some accolade, some brownie points or something, or to avoid going to hell. Both of those extremes to me felt like it was corrupt. And I said, I just want to be good because I'm a good person. And I was like, like that means I am a good person, which I had no idea that. And it was like my first sense of self-worth. But I was cleaning this greasy spot off of the ceiling. My mother had dragged me down the hallway early morning and told me to clean the ceiling. And I was really in this really despondent, sad place because I was probably at this time between 11, 13 years old. I'm not sure. It's a long time ago. But anyway, I turned around and walked off this counter. And when I did, I fell out of my body. And I was watching myself from a distance. I could see my physical body falling. I recognized the soul that lived within my body as myself. And there was another me that was this omnipresent observer, which was also me. But it was dispassionate. In other words, it didn't buy into all my little victim stories that you were talking about. It saw like a bigger view. It recognized that my soul had purposely chosen this life because these were lessons that my soul longed to have, that was like bringing my soul joy to have these experiences, which is really a quite challenging thing to think about. But my soul had chosen to have this suffering and this experience, probably based on some past lives, I'm sure, some karmic forces going there. But I was shown that then I was taken out to like, outer space, I guess, out into like space, and I could see stars and a serene night. And I knew in that instance that that's what we are. We are pure energy. And boom, I was back in my body. So that one experience, and I had asked in that state, I had asked God to help my mom stop drinking. And I also had asked him, like, I don't want to know that you exist after I die. That's also felt like cheating. Mm-hmm. I want to know before. And it felt more impossible at that time that my mom would stop drinking than to actually know God. And both things happened, where I was gifted with the opportunity to have a relationship with my mom where she was no longer drinking for the last 20 years of her life. And I also had the experience of knowing God in a more intimate way in life, not afterlife. That pivotal moment, I started going to Sunday school. I called buses. My mom thought I had lost my mind. And I was baptized 5 times because I didn't feel it. And I wasn't going to lie to myself.
I'm not feeling it yet.
I'm going to another church because what I was looking for was this unconditional love, this sense of all pervasive love that I had encountered, that I knew to be what some people might call God, that I just call the pure energy of consciousness or love. And eventually I left home, as I said, and I kind of put all of that aside because I left home. I was young. I was beautiful. I was alone, and there's a lot of wolves out there. So I had to like really take care of myself. I had to pay my own bills. I bought my own car. Like I had a lot of stuff to do. So I kind of put all this spiritual stuff on the side until I got divorced from your dad. And I was on by the way, that trip I'm talking about where I went off the cliff was my first dating experience. It didn't go well. Ooh. As a single woman. this guy wanted me to go on a trip with him. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not really ready to go and, date, but I'll go with you. And it was with him and his children. And I said, as long as I can bring my cousin Carmen. And that's how my cousin got involved in it. And because I wanted it to, I guess, like a chaperone. I don't know, 35-year-old woman with a chaperone, but there you go.
Hey, I feel it.
Feeling it right now. You're feeling it right
feeling it right now.
So I wasn't really ready. And I guess my soul was ready though, because that I was ready for and I think this happens, that you have many opportunities in your life to see the light, to be the light. And sometimes we push them aside. To continue to answer your question, so I had that spiritual experience, and then I kept looking for answers. And I also had that nugget within me that I just really wanted to do good for goodness sake, not to get any accolades, not to get to heaven, not to avoid hell. And there was things that I did. First of all, I think education is super important. I think the more you know, the better it is. And I remember when I read about children that come from a dysfunctional family, as I did, and the odds were astronomically against my surviving that kind of a situation, and certainly not to thrive. And I remember being kind of disappointed when I read that. It was like that and they said the only way you can break the chain was education. So I threw myself into reading everything I could about healing myself from my childhood. But when I got to the end of all these psychological books, I still felt empty. I feel like I had a secret eating disorder, which I had for many years. And it was kind of the way that I would purge my fear, So I recognized what addictions are because I had that myself. So I realized I had to find a way to not numb or run. And what I found though with psychology was it comes to a limit or to an end that wasn't fulfilling, at least for me. I'm not saying for everybody. And what that led to was that door to spirituality. And I feel like my connection with the divine, even though it's not religious, and it's never been religious, because as I said, I tried religion. And even though I think it's so beautiful for so many people, because I always say, if you're going to be religious, whether it's Buddhist or Christian or Hindu or whatever, do that and do it well, because it is a beautiful path and there is a lot of goodness. But for my soul, because of my experiences where I experienced God as pure energy, this presence of love, I couldn't encapsulate it in that kind of a way. But I mean, I'm very well read. I've read the Bible 7 times through, backwards, forwards. I've read the Quran. I've read, a bunch of Buddhist texts, Hindu. I mean, I know the Yoga Sutras. But at the end of it all, what you find, a consistent theme running through all of these different religions is love, the essence of love. And I think I always come back to that as a source of strength and my conviction. And I always ask myself, and it was a question I started asking a long time ago, is what is my most loving response to this person? And I'm just going to say, sometimes my most loving response is pretty raunchy, but at least it's a conscious, this is my most elevated, because when we're in the midst of chaos or, someone's pushing your buttons or whatever it is, the reactive part of me would show up. At least I was actively asking, is there a better way? Is there a better way to react to this? Is there a better way to meet this person? Or at least I would remove myself until I could. But I have to say, the truth of it is, my belief at least is that we all have angels and guides and teachers, mentors of many lives that are always with us. And I always call upon my angels and guides to help me. Here's the thing though, they're not going to do the work for you. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of people look to religion or look to even guides, angels, this and that to, hey, give me a miracle. One of the things that really made me sad about my mom is that she was like, I can't wait to die and meet Jesus. And it used to make me so sad because I was like, life is so beautiful. You're here to live, And she was always looking for a miracle when the miracle was her. She was the miracle. And what she did with this miracle was up to her, but she was always kind of sitting back on the couch waiting for God to save her. And I wrote about this in my book, a story that I'll kind of summarize for you really quickly. A guy sitting there, a flood coming, and so the warnings came and he said, no, I'm not leaving. God will save me. And then his friend comes by in a little boat because the water's raising, says, come with us. And he said, no, God will save me. Goes on, the helicopter comes. They try to save him. He said, no, God will save me. Finally, he he's overcome with water and he's like drowns and he gets to heaven. He's like, I had faith in you, God. I waited for you to save me. He said, I sent you a warning. I sent you a boat.
Yeah.
I sent you a helicopter. What more did you want?
Mm-hmm.
So the whole point being basically that we are here to have the experience of shadow and light, of choice and consequence, of contrast, of light, of dark, and to find our way. And nobody will be left behind. Nobody will be abandoned. But for some of us, it might take us a few lifetimes to find our way, because that's the grace of free will. That's the autonomy that we're given to find our own way. And I feel like it's a magnetic universe. So the circumstances of your life, like to be attracted to your beautiful soul, you to be attracted to me, we had something in common. We're probably healing similar things, and we're probably a force of good, more united than separate.
Mm-hmm.
It was very strange, that I had that dream about you when you weren't even a concept yet, because I was like 5 or 6 years old. I remember my mom being totally freaked out when I said, I'm going to have a baby. She's like, what? But that's, I guess, the core of it is that I believe that, you have to do your part, but there's also grace and goodness helping you. But when you do, like helping you to help yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's it. And on that note, like I would want to ask you the same question, like with your struggle with addictions, like how did you overcome that urge to, because there were some negative experiences that you had to go through to give up the addiction. You know what I mean? Like the longing for that comfort. How did you do that?
How did I overcome my addictions?
Not the addiction, like necessarily, but like, a lot of people, they go through addictions and then even like a eating disorder or something like this, like, there is a certain payoff that you get that you're going to lose if you stop doing it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So what advice would you give somebody? How did you stay strong and how did you do that? And what was inside of you that helped you?
Yeah. I mean, it's like overcoming any challenge, like you've been discussing, really overcoming losing something in your life or losing someone. I feel like my relationship to drugs and alcohol was like a relationship to a really good friend. So I don't really believe that the alcohol or the drugs is the problem. I think it's just the solution to a problem. So I think you have to address the root problem, which is the pain, which is the trauma, which is the emotions surrounding all of those experiences. We live in a society, Western medicine is a lot of the time trying to mask that pain with a Band-Aid on a deeper wound. And we're really just numbing and running away from that pain with pills. In my case, pharmaceutical, even that was just prescribed. And so we're not really addressing the issues. So when I started to really deal with my emotions and with the trauma and with the things that I had gone through, then it started to create sustainable change in my life. If you just try to go cold turkey and quit drinking or quit whatever, and you don't really get to the reason of why it's happening, it's really, really difficult. And a lot of people that just, they attend AA meetings every day. It works, but that's why you have to keep going to the AA meetings every day, because you're not really getting to the rest of the issues. Well, some people are, but in other cases, you're not, because you need to do the deeper work of what's actually underneath. What's the root problem here? Why am I drinking every day? What am I trying to run from? Where's the pain? What's the discomfort that I'm trying to avoid? So sitting with that discomfort, and it's a journey. I mean, I'm still sitting with the discomfort today. I mean, and then there's new layers, and you think you've healed it all, and then there's another layer. There's another cycle to break. Even just going through this divorce recently, there's another cycle to break of, wow, actually, I thought I had broken the cycle of being in toxic relationships, yet I was still in one. Still in a bit of a toxic relationship, and I had to break that again. And now I'm alone again. And now I have to feel the loneliness. And now I have to step into the discomfort of, will I be alone for the rest of my life? And being okay with that. And then going through a breakup and having to feel that and not drink. And the last time I was alone, last time I went through a breakup, which I talked about this previously on the podcast, I drank a full bottle of wine to deal with it. And this time I was just sad. And it felt good. And learning that it's okay to be sad too. It actually is part of being a human to feel sad. But somehow we have decided in this world that feeling sad is not allowed. And that it means you're depressed, which means you should take a pill or go to the bar or avoid that. Or, there's so many different labels now. You're depressed, you're this or that, or if you can't focus and you have an idea, you take this pill or that pill. It's like, okay, take a pill, just get back on the machine, take a pill, get back to work, go to there, this, that. It's like, no, feel.
So you're feeling like you just allowed yourself to feel
to feel.
Yeah. And so what do you think about coping mechanisms, like teaching children, different coping, like meditation or
I think that breath coping mechanisms are very important as well, but that's part of the feeling, and I feel like breath work has been one of the most powerful tools for me to connect back to feeling and to healing as well, to releasing all of the pain. And for children, I've worked with some children, like I was doing volunteer work at Lotus House, one of the largest women's shelters in North America. And I went and I was working with the youth. There's a lot of women that are coming from living on the streets, and was doing breath work and mindfulness with them. And surprisingly, they're so open, so ready to learn. And it's just really, really good for them because they have a lot of trauma. They've experienced a lot of pain. So they're trying to basically get back on their feet, and they have a lot of kids. And even more surprising was just that the kids were so excited to do the breath work and to do the work. And it was really, really beneficial for them. So I feel like it's a great way to reconnect back to your body. For me, I think the breathwork journeys were really, really pivotal in releasing a lot of the toxic emotional residue that was around the trauma that I had experienced, the just challenges, different things that were it was lying just dormant in my body and keeping me in that traumatic stress response that I didn't really know about. So breathwork has been really important. Yoga even was the beginning of my journey too. It first brought me back to my breath, opening up body and different parts of my body that had trapped emotions. And I think love is really important too. And, being surrounded by love and family and friends and reaching out and not isolating.
But what about people who don't have anybody?
Well, I think there's always a way to connect to community. You can always reach out. And I think that's something that I have done well is there's always community around. Sometimes you do have to walk through a very lonely path. And especially when you're awakening, you sort of have to get rid of a lot of people.
That's true.
And then you there's this in-between stage as you're evolving, when you're moving from like one energetic level to the next. And in that in-between stage, you're going to be alone.
Yeah.
And you're going to feel lonely. And you don't really know how long that will last. And you have to learn how to be okay being alone and feeling lonely. And once you become okay with it, all of a sudden you start attracting new friends.
That's true.
The moment that you're like, okay, I'm fine. I guess I'm alone now for a little while.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you find a new community, you join a new class, somehow you end up just starting to attract because your energy goes from that neediness to acceptance.
Did you have a bedrock, though, of faith?
When did this turn into an interview of you interviewing me?
Oh,
did we switch roles?
I'm just curious. Did you have a bedrock of faith after that? Like a foundation of some kind of faith or rootedness or connection to God? Just because I'm thinking about, all the people that are out there that admire you because of
I know
that you've come through this.
Yeah. Well, I think God for me is not necessarily something I call God. It's really the universe. I see God in everything. And for me, it's been nature. So connecting back to nature, to the ocean, to the mountains.
I love that.
To the jungle, to animals. My horses have been my angels, my saviors. Yeah. But I don't really even say God necessarily. Not that I'm against saying God, but I just see Mother Earth. I just see nature. I see energy. I see the universe, which I guess is God, really. So I don't know,
It's just that word God, I think sometimes it's been so misused.
It holds a lot of like religious weight. So for me, I guess sometimes having gone to like Catholic church and things with my dad, sometimes God feels a little bit much.
Yeah.
But I do feel God. And sometimes I look into the ocean and I see the reflection of the sun and it feels like universe, God.
That's nice. I was just curious because for me, it was like when you asked about the force of good.
Yeah.
It was such an important thing for me was my connection to the divine. Like you, I don't mind the word God. I like to call it divine, universe, love, consciousness. I tried to shift it around so it's not just one word and definitely not related to any kind of religion, but to all religions, that carry this thread of love throughout them.
What does love mean to you? How do you define love?
So love was a question. When I was told to write this book, love is all, and share the message, love is all that matters. Of course, when I came back, I was like, well, first of all, I need to feel worthy and be able to embody this message. So I need to know what love is. And I went on a search, like just really looking for the answer of like, what is love? So it's a very important question. I came upon an Indian saint named Ramana Maharishi, and his definition of love. He never wrote a single word. All of his teachings were dictated to disciples. He had a near-death experience at 17 years old, and he was dead for 45 minutes. And as he was hovering above his body, he looked down and he said, as he saw his dead body, he was like, well, if that's me or that I'm dead, but I'm still alive, I'm still here, then who am I? So the book is called Who Am I? And it's like this very small little book. And I remember, I'm not sure who was talking about Rama Maharishi, but I heard about it. And, I was always a seeker and a reader. I mean, I've read everything. So when I heard his name, I said, I'm going to read this book. And what I found in there was a definition of love that I always challenge anyone and everyone to give a better definition of love. So his disciple asked him, he said, Master, what is love? And he said, love is the pure light of undifferentiated consciousness. And when I heard that, it was like stunning to me, because I understood that, because I had experienced that light. And so when you dissect that sentence, it says I know when you say love, people always go to heartbreaks or feeling good or romantic love or parental love or other kinds of love, which is all inclusive. But he kind of, in this sentence, he says, love is the pure light. So it's like pure means untarnished, like no, like a pure diamond, like no flaws, of undifferentiated consciousness, meaning that like there's no difference between darkness and light. Like everything is available. Everything's the same. Like you would love the child on the street as much as you love your own child. Like everything is undifferentiated. So this untarnished light, that undifferentiated consciousness. So love is the pure light of undifferentiated consciousness is my definition of love. When I notice that I'm defining things as good or bad, or seeing things as opposites, then I recognize that I'm not loving. So I think when I was in the dating game, like you are now, I remember, because I'm kind of like the love girl. And so people will be like, well, if you love everybody, then how is our relationship different? And so the difference is, for me at least, that there is this all pervasive love, this undifferentiated consciousness, but you have different levels of intimacy with different people. For example, I have a different level of intimacy with you, that's my daughter, than I might not have with a stranger I meet on the street. Hopefully, I would have a different level of intimacy, right? Intimacy. So, I feel like when I say intimacy, people don't understand what that means. It's like when you have a level of intimacy, that means you allow people to really see you. But you can love everything and everyone equally, which is that pure light of undifferentiated consciousness. And when I'm in my most exalted state of the most radiant version of Chrystal, then I'm able to do that, which is not all the time, but because I wouldn't claim to be enlightened or anything, but more often than not, I'm able to like feel this all encompassing love for all things, all people. And that would mean like, we don't have this like differentiation between what's good, what's bad. It's more like everything is allowed. The wilting as much as the blossoming. Everything is, to be kind of crass, the dog shit as well. Everything is part of the glorious beauty. And on a subatomic level, another thing that I saw in this out of body experience, Christina, is that everything is energy and we're all connected. That means that we're connected to Mother Teresa. That means that I am Mother Teresa, you're Mother Teresa, but we're also Hitler. Like we are part of everything. So whatever we send out, we get back. And as you raise your energy, as I raise my energy, I connect with higher and higher vibrations. It doesn't mean I'm disconnected from the other. It just means that this is where I resonate. This is what I'm bringing to myself, which is so important to move along. I remember one time I went to a acupuncturist, just because I own yoga studios. Everyone's always saying, do you know a good acupuncturist? I'm like, no. So I decided I would try acupuncture just so that I could have a sort of reference of like, what is acupuncture? So I went to this Dr. Chen, who, by the way, is here in Dallas. And I had this acupuncture done. And he's like, okay, well, after the session, it was like an hour session. He took all the little needles out. He's like, everything's good, except for you're burning your chi really quickly. I'm like, oh, that's good. That means like I have like a high metabolism chi. I thought it was a good thing. And he was like, no, Chrystal, no, you don't want to burn your chi quickly because it's like a life force. And once it's depleted, like you have a certain amount of life force and then you're done. And so I was like, oh, and I said, well, then I guess I'll be like a firecracker, burn out quickly. And he said, no, Chrystal, you want to live a long life so that you can learn more and love more. I like was stunned again. I felt like it was a message from the divine. Like, oh, that's true. Like we're here on a mission of love and light to evolve in the way that only we can, to share our love in the way that only we can, and to be a force of good, to your point, in the way that only we can. And so it gave me again another moment of appreciation of our time on the planet and how fleeting it is. I heard a really interesting quote some time ago. And it was like, I realize now that my most precious commodity is time, especially because I have more time behind me than I have in front of me. And so as you get older, like you start to recognize how precious each moment is and how fleeting also, how quick. Like I promise you yesterday I was your age and today I'm my age and tomorrow I'll be another age, but we're talking about age because it's your birthday. I feel like that's the real bedrock for me for my transformation. Yes, there's a lot of tools, psychological tools that I learned through educating myself. And yoga was definitely really, for me, like you use breath work. For me, yoga was the way that I moved trauma out of my body and still do today. But it's my foundation in this connection to the divine that I see in all things and all people that keeps me centered and has been the foundation of me being able to write this book and share this message. And so it's a really exciting time for me because I have come to the place in my life. And by the way, I want to thank you for your contribution to my evolution because I've learned a lot from you. Again, as we send the arrow out to places we will never know. So I was asking you those questions because I respect your insight and all the hard work you've done. I'm really proud of you. So you've been part of my healing. I mean, my angels and guides are always around me. I have a very close connection to that. And I believe that we all have. We're infinite beings of light. So, I love you so much. I've only had, 34 years with you. There's beings in my life that I've had eons of time with that are my soulmates, and you, as you do too, which I believe we probably had many lives together. But, so yeah, I mean, and the ideal of being alone in community, as you were talking about, I think we're never really alone, except we're always alone inside our head. I remember some of the loneliest times in my life, and I know you can relate to this, is when I was married in a very unhappy relationship. So I was in a relationship that wasn't, not necessarily because it was his fault. It was just not the right relationship for us both. And it was like depleting my life force, like as I was slowly dying in this relationship. Like the person who I am now is not even close to who I was back then. And so, hey, stop that. Puppies over here. But the foundation of faith, and not even faith, like just a connection to the divine and this knowing that there is something more. And I love that you see it in nature and you see it in all things. But nature, I think, is high prana. So that's why we have this connection. It's easier to see it. But eventually you see it in all things. I remember seeing an interview with this yogi who lived in the dumps of India. And, he was in this rubble. And so they were interviewing him and they was like, tell me your experience. He said, oh, life is so beautiful. And they're like, how can you say life is so beautiful? You live here. There's death. There's desolation. There's disease. There's pollution. It smells like, a sewer. Like there's dirty. There's crime. And he says, do you see over there? And this always, it touched me so much because he was like, do you see that little yellow flower, like growing through the sidewalk, like life, this little beautiful flower coming up out through the crack in the sidewalk. And then he looked over and he saw this mother, and she was nursing her child, and the mother, how much love she has for her child. And then through this hazy sky, like there's a sliver of blue. Did you see that? And like, it's like where he was focusing, like he looked for the radiance in all things.
Yeah.
And so that's my definition of love, is the pure light of undifferentiated consciousness that sees the beauty of God in even the horror and the tragedy of life, as much as the blossoming and the blooming of life, which is hard because it's hard to see people suffering. But if on a soul level, if you were to choose this life of great challenge because you're a warrior of the soul, it's good. And here's the thing, like when people die, like this is one thing that I saw in my near-death experience as I was seeing my panoramic view of my life, is that every single thought, word, and action ripples out infinitely, changing universes. So what we do really matters. And at the end of our life, it doesn't matter how many plaques we have on the wall or how much money we have in the bank or the cars we're driving, but were you kind? And I was shown like random acts of kindness are like the most important thing you could actually ever do in your life. And that's like the poignant moment of your soul, when you were actually not self-serving and you were actually helping others. And for no reason at all, not to get anything back, like when you were just actually benevolent and kind and gracious. And so that's inspiring to me, because I feel like that's what a flower does. A flower is just like beautiful and blossoming and offering the fragrance and feeding the bees and keeping the ecosystem going, and just radiance and requiring nothing in return.
So I have one final question.
Okay.
I'm wondering, what would you tell your 34-year-old self if you could go back and talk to her today?
Well, it's something that I've actually done. At 34, I was going through divorce, and I was really sad and alone. Is that basically at that age, that's when I had this near-death experience. So I would probably go back and say, hang on. You're going to do really good things, and you're going to change a lot of lives. Hang on. It's going to be a rough ride, but it's going to be good. And you're never given more than you can handle, and what you do matters. And this is something I do every day, Christina. I wake up in the morning and I always tell myself, Chrystal, I love you. You're doing a good job. You're a beautiful soul. And what I do this is because I want to fill up my own cup so that I can be full, and I'm not looking to receive that from others. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I fill my cup up spiritually. I fill my cup up in other ways as well. I tell myself, I buy myself flowers, all the time.
I can buy myself flowers.
I mean, I literally, before that song, I've been buying myself flowers for years, because I'd be disappointed that somebody wasn't buying me flowers.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, like, when you buy yourself flowers, to your point, then everyone's sending you flowers. But when I wasn't buying myself flowers, I never received flowers. And so it's a really nice thing, because as I fill my own cup up, and I would tell this 34-year-old this, I would just say, love is all that matters. Hang on. Doing good. You're going to be there. I actually did this journey with you, the breathwork journey, where I went back and found my little crystal self and picked her up and told her this. Like, you're going to make it through this. You're going to have yoga studios. You're going to write a book. You're going to do all this good in the world. So you're not alone. I'm with you. I'm telling you right now, it's going to happen, because it's already happened in the eternal now. Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe you're talking to her right now.
I'm probably am.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Power for Good podcast and sharing your message of love and light and your journey. Such an inspiration always. Is there anything else you would like to share right now? Where can anyone listening to this podcast right now find you and connect with you?
I have a website called crystalraesoul.com. You can find me there.
Rae. Yeah, and we'll link everything in the show notes.
And then also you can find me on Amazon for Love Letters to Your Soul.
Get her book.
Yeah,
Love Letters to Your Soul on Amazon.
Yeah, I'd love to connect. I'm on Facebook too, and Instagram. You can find me under Chrystal Rae Yoga. Chrystal Rae. Just go. And by the way, Rae is spelled R-A-E, and Chrystal has an H-R-Y. So, but you'll link it. So,
and she will soon be doing a ritual and practice for Rae Rituals membership.
Oh, yes, I will. I'm happy to do that soon. Proud of you
for joining us. Thanks so much for joining us today on Christmas, whatever you're celebrating today. Happy holidays. It's my birthday, so maybe you're celebrating that.
I am.
Yes. Now it's time for us to go continue the celebration.
Yeah.
Sending you so much love.
See you soon.
Bye-bye. Sending love.